Most people think hot sake is just a mask for cheap bottom shelf alcohol. And honestly, I used to feel the same way. But would you be surprised to learn that there's a category of sake that tastes way more premium, but you have to crank up the heat in order to really unlock all the flavor? I call this the sake paradox. And today, I'm gonna show you why heat is essential to enjoy some amazing sake and isn't just a tool to hide bad bottles. All right, so here's the game plan. We're gonna go over why hot sake became so common, why inexpensive sake is served hot, and lastly, the real reason some sake just tastes better warm. Because the truth is, some sake is just made to be enjoyed that way. All right, so here's the backstory. When sake first hit the United States, we weren't getting the good stuff because of course we weren't. We were getting the regular, inexpensive table sake, or what the Japanese call futsushu. Restaurants will heat this stuff because warming sake smooths out those rough edges and softens the alcohol. And as sneaky as this might sound, when you really understand sake, it kind of makes sense because there's a piece to this that nobody really talks about. And that's the shelf life. Sake isn't wine, it's not whiskey, it's brewed like beer. So it's a lot more delicate, it's a lot more alive, and it's not really meant to be sitting on the shelf for 3-4 years at a time while people crank out a two ounce pour here, a 3 ounce pour there. So if a bottle of sake is just sitting on a bar shelf for 6 months, especially if it's already been opened, and again, especially if it's unrefrigerated, after a while, it's gonna start picking up some characteristics that aren't very favorable. And these restaurant owners, they know this, and they have a choice to either throw out the bottle and waste all of the money on the parts of the sake that weren't drank already, or they just heat it up, hide some of those unfavorable characteristics, and they can still make money off the bottle. And unfortunately, that's kind of just the experience that most Americans have associated with sake over the years because of that problem. But here's where things get interesting. The idea that all hot sake is bad, that part is a myth. And that's unfortunately one of those myths that I believed myself for quite a bit of time. I thought that if it was hot, it was probably cheap, and if it was chilled, it was probably the better stuff. Now you're probably still thinking, wait, if the premium stuff is served chilled and the cheap stuff is heated up to hide all the badness, isn't hot sake still technically a downgrade? And that's a fair question, and I understand the line of thinking, but you have to understand that for the premium stuff, the tojis or the brewmasters, they're trying to emphasize a lot more of these like delicate features of sake that just aren't very conducive when heat is applied to those same bottles. But that doesn't mean that temperature is like a quality knob or like, some scale for sake. It's really about finding out what is the best temperature to bring out the best expression of that specific bottle. Different styles react totally different to heat. Richer sakes, like those that have polishing ratios above 60%, so think anything that's not a ginjo or a dai ginjo, those tend to open up a little bit more when you apply heat to them. And here's why. Those richer styles tend to preserve a lot of the lipids and proteins in the rice grain. I call it the bacon grease effect. If you've ever looked at like a cold pan that had bacon grease in it, it's in that solid white form, you walk past it, you're not really getting any aromas or anything. But as soon as somebody lights a fire underneath that thing and it starts melting, all of those aromas just explode out into the rest of the kitchen and the rest of the house, and everybody's looking for the food. Sake is pretty much the same way. Once you add that heat, you just energize the whole brew, and that brings out all those aromas. All right, so now we have an opportunity to demonstrate how heating up a bottle of sake will actually impact its flavor profile and also those aromas that I spoke about earlier. I picked this particular bottle. It is the Suige Drunken Well. It is, I'll just get this right there. I think I just need, as long as I hide my face, it should do pretty good. And then here's the back. And I picked this bottle for a few reasons. One, it was only about $22. Two, it's an MTC sake import, and I just really appreciate how much information they provide on those back labels, because I don't think, you probably can't really see that. But I appreciate how much information they put on the back labels. It makes it easier for me to kind of get a good idea of what I'm looking for. So this bottle is a Tokubetsu Junmai. One of the reasons I also did pick this was because, at least according to the back label, it's supposed to be pretty good across every spectrum of temperature from chilled all the way to hot. I do want to note that this does have a polishing ratio of 55%. I was trying to find something that kind of checked every box. And though I know I said earlier in the video, there's 60% and above, but this one, like I said, can't win them all, but 55%. And hey, if anything, this will be a good experience for all of us. But yeah, so this is the bottle we're heating up. And so I have it heated up here, and I'll do a quick temperature check before I pour it into my little choco or little sake cup here. But on the nose, room temperature, you know what? I do see on the bottom of here, it says dairy. And the first time I smelled this at room temperature, I didn't really get that, but now I definitely kind of see it. It's almost like a milk. It's a very slight, like, milk note I'm getting out of it. Some of the earthiness too, but it's weird. I never smelled like a dairy note coming off a bottle of sake, but I do also smell a hint of that fruitiness as well. But that's this bottle at room temperature. And most of those, like, I'm getting those aromas, but it's kind of subtle, like, you know, it's not a big explosion of flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pour this, and then while it's in the choco, I'll just read it, get a nice temperature check. And I didn't have a whole lot in here, but let's just get this. And not only do I feel the heat coming off here, but the aromas, like that milk note that I was getting like at room temperature, I'm not getting on the heated version. But let me temp this real quick. So I'm getting this at about 106, so not exactly on the inferno side, but I think it's good enough for the purposes of this demonstration. Like I said, already on the nose, I'm getting a completely different profile than at room temperature. But let's get this on the palate. Kampai, and you see that's, don't worry about where I got this from. Kampai. Definitely smooth. I didn't want to, you know, kind of muddy the waters and taste this ahead of smelling it, but I'm getting like a lot of that, more definitely closer on the umami side. I taste a little bit of the fruitiness, and I think that's probably with this polishing ratio being at 55%. So, you know, it's still technically, you know, in like ginjo range, but I'm getting more of that. I'm getting more of that umami side more so than anything. Yeah, pretty good. I could sip this all day, especially on like a colder day. It's almost like toned down, like if you tone down the spices on like what are those red teas, those kind of more like spicy teas. That's kind of the experience that I get out of drinking this. But yeah, pretty good. To really drive this home, temperature can really impact any drink. If you've ever had a white wine that got a little too warm, or a red wine that was served a bit too cold and it kind of just ruined the experience, you already understand how impactful temperature can be on a drinking experience. Sake works the same way. The right temperature can really elevate it, and the wrong temperature can even make a really good bottle kind of unremarkable. In Japan, this isn't even really a debate. They have specific names for the different temperature tiers of sake, from frigid cold all the way to burn your tongue hot. They aren't asking if it's good or bad. So the better question isn't should sake be served hot or cold. The better question is what temperature works best for this specific bottle of sake. And so that's why I say if your only experience with sake has been hot sake at a sushi restaurant, there's a good chance you haven't even started to begin to really experience what sake can be. So I'm curious, did your local sushi spot actually ruin hot sake for you, or were you able to find some sakes that actually tasted pretty good warm? I'm really curious to know because I want to find some better bottles that taste really good heated up for some future videos. And in the next video, we're going to talk about something bigger because hot sake is really just one part of a much larger misunderstanding. Most people are actually drinking sake wrong, and I'm going to show you the 3 biggest mistakes that people make and how small changes can completely elevate your sake drinking experience. So if you enjoy exploring the world of sake, be sure to subscribe. And we learn together, we sip together, and until the next time, kampai.